One day, a tired and troubled traveler came to a Zen master, his eyes heavy with frustration and pain. Bowing deeply, he said, "Master, I feel trapped by my emotions. Anger comes so quickly, and it burns everything around me. My words, my actions, my relationships. I regret it afterward, but I don't know how to stop. Please show me how to find peace." The master listened with compassion and poured the traveler a cup of tea. He handed him the cup and said, "Let me tell you a story. In a faraway land, there lived a powerful king who took great pride in his wealth and strength. One summer, he decided to visit a neighboring kingdom, drawn by stories of its wise and kind ruler. The wise king welcomed him with open arms, hosting a grand feast in his honor. The hall was decorated with golden lights, and the air was filled with the aroma of the finest food and wine. As the visiting king lifted his cup of tea to drink, he noticed a crack along its edge. His smile faded, replaced by a scowl. He slammed the cup onto the table with a loud clatter, his voice echoing across the hall. "Is this how you treat a guest?" he barked. "Serving tea in a broken cup is an insult." The room fell silent. All eyes turned to the wise king, who remained calm and unshaken. After a moment, the wise king smiled gently and said, "Your Majesty, don't let such a small thing disturb your peace. The tea inside is just as pure and warm." The visiting king glared. "A cracked cup is not worthy of me. It shows disrespect." The wise king leaned forward, his voice soft but steady. "The crack is not the problem, Your Majesty. It is your reaction to it. The tea remains unchanged, but your anger has clouded your ability to enjoy it. You see the crack and forget the gift inside." The visiting king sat back, his anger cooling. The wise king's words lingered in his mind long after the feast. On his journey home, he couldn't stop thinking about them. For weeks, his anger rose whenever he saw a flaw, in his servants, in his palace, in himself. But slowly he began to wonder, what if it wasn't the flaws that caused his anger, but his refusal to accept them? Over time, the king learned to pause before reacting. When his servants made mistakes, he breathed deeply and spoke calmly. When his palace had imperfections, he appreciated its beauty instead of focusing on its faults. As he changed, his kingdom became more peaceful, and he felt lighter and freer than ever before. The Zen master paused, letting the story sink in. Then he added, "In a small village, there was a potter who worked day and night, shaping clay into beautiful bowls and pots. One day he finished making his finest bowl, a gift for the richest merchant in town. But just as he placed it on the shelf, he noticed a tiny chip on its edge. The potter sighed, feeling defeated. All his hard work was ruined, he thought. Just then, a wandering monk passed by. The monk admired the bowl and said, "This is beautiful." The potter shook his head. "It's ruined. A chip has spoiled it." The monk picked up the bowl and smiled. "This chip makes it one of a kind. The flaw is part of its story, just as our mistakes and scars are part of ours. Perfection isn't what makes something valuable. Acceptance does." The potter, moved by the monk's words, began to see the chip as a part of the bowl's charm. When the merchant arrived, he loved the bowl and treasured it, not in spite of its flaw, but because of it. It reminded him that life's imperfections can hold the greatest beauty. The traveler, listening closely, asked, "Master, how can this story help me control my anger? I feel like I'm failing every time I get upset." The master pointed to a stream nearby. "Look at the water," he said. "When it meets a rock, does it stop? No, it flows around it and keeps moving. Your anger is like the rock. Don't fight it, flow past it. Accept that it's there, but don't let it block your path." The traveler frowned. "But it's hard. My anger feels so strong, like a fire that takes over." The master nodded. "Fire burns when it's fed, but if you stop adding wood, it dies down. Each time you feel anger rise, pause and breathe. The pause is like taking away the wood. It gives the fire no fuel. Over time, the flame will fade." The traveler sat quietly, letting the master's words settle. He decided to start small. The next time anger bubbled up, he paused, took a deep breath, and chose to let it pass. It wasn't easy, but each time he paused, it became a little easier. Years later, the traveler became a teacher. One day, a student asked him, "Master, do you ever get angry now?" The teacher smiled and said, "Of course. Anger visits me, just like it visits everyone. But now I see it for what it is, a passing guest, not a master. When it knocks, I don't invite it to stay. Instead, I greet it, let it pass, and return to peace." Lesson from this story is the crack in the bowl, the rock in the stream, the fire of anger, all teach the same truth. Life will never be perfect, but it doesn't need to be. Our peace doesn't come from controlling the world. It comes from how we choose to respond to it. Anger, frustration, and pain are natural, but they are not permanent. When we pause, breathe, and let them pass, we free ourselves from their hold. As the Buddha once said, "You will not be punished for your anger, but by it." True peace comes when you master yourself, not the world around you. Let this story remind you, the beauty of life is not in perfection, but in the way we embrace its flaws and choose to live with grace.